welcome to another episode of Mike's Expat Kitchen, where your host, Mike Chili, is cooking German dishes for you with American ingredients. Today we're going to cook white asparagus soup. If you've ever traveled Germany during the months of April or May, you've probably found that all the restaurants have asparagus on the menu. It's really hard to escape, and my favorite is white asparagus soup. Now you might ask, how can I cook white asparagus soup in the US when there's no white asparagus? Hold on, I'm going to use a little trick here and use pickled white asparagus from the German store in San Francisco. Now, just for reference, this is what white asparagus looks like. In the US, you have mostly green asparagus, which is very different in taste and texture. White asparagus is soft and has a very subtle taste. And that's the kind mostly grown and produced in Germany, and that's why the dishes are mostly based on white asparagus, not green. Problem is, though, that you won't find it in your typical produce section in the supermarket in the US, but I have a German store around the corner called Lehr's that has pickled asparagus. If you're not as lucky, check out Amazon. They have a similar product, and if you buy a 6-pack, you get it for about $5 a jar. Either way, the pickled asparagus is great for making asparagus soup. It'll even save you some time because it's already cooked. And that's why we'll have the soup ready to eat in about 15 to 20 minutes. Alright, here's the ingredients we're going to need aside from the canned asparagus. We need 17 ounces of broth. I use beef bone broth here, but you can also use chicken broth for a milder taste. Then comes about half a cup of heavy whipping cream, 1 egg, 3 ounces of butter, 2 cups of white wine. For the soup base, we're going to cook some white roux, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour for that. For decoration of the finished soup, freshly chopped chives. Get them fresh if you can. 1/4 of an onion, finely minced, and 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. In Germany, you'd use Maggi seasoning for that, but it's not easy to get in the US except maybe for some Asian markets like Ranch 99 in Daly City. But for our purposes, Worcestershire sauce is close enough. Now for those spears of pickled asparagus, try to get them out of the jar in one piece and save the sauce in an extra bowl for later. Take special care of the tips. They're the best part of the asparagus. Try not to break them and cut them off so there's about an inch left. Carefully put the pieces into an extra bowl for later when we're starting the soup. As mentioned before, the asparagus in the jar is already cooked, so there's no need to further cook it. Instead, we're going to dump them into the ready-made soup later. Next up, we're going to mince the onion really finely. You want to get those pieces down to a size where they're almost not noticeable when you're eating the soup. Chives are used for decoration on top of the soup and also to provide some crunchiness when you're chewing on them, so leave them at a reasonable size. Alright, that's all for the prep work. Now let's get started cooking the soup. In a large pot, heat up about 3 ounces of butter. Be careful, don't turn up the heat all the way like I did. Here the butter's not supposed to turn brown. Dump in the minced onions and let them take some color. Takes about a minute or so. Keep stirring them thoroughly so that they don't get stuck at the bottom of the pot. And now it's time to make the soup base as a roux, which is a French word. In German it's called einbrennen, which kind of translates to burning, but you're not supposed to burn it. So put about 2 tablespoons of regular flour into the mix and let it take on some brown color while whisking it vigorously. This is supposed to be a white roux, so we are looking for a light brown color, not a dark brown. These lumps of flour that are building right now are supposed to go away, so what we're going to do is add only a little bit of beef broth and then keep stirring like a maniac in order to make those lumps disappear. Then pour in a little bit more of the beef broth and keep stirring. A little bit more of the beef broth and keep stirring until all the lumps have dissolved and you get a thick sauce. Keep adding more beef broth. I'm using all the 17 ounces in that pack, and even the sauce that came with the canned asparagus, I'm going to dump in there so I get more fluid. So this is about the right fluid level. Now we need to cook the roux for about 10 minutes. Why is that? If you add flour to a soup base, the raw flour will have a starchy flavor to it, and that's not what we want. But if you let it cook for a while, then the starchy flavor will go away. So set the timer to about 10 minutes and let it boil. Make sure that it doesn't go all over the place. Keep an eye on it and regulate the heat so it won't escape from the pot. As it is, the soup base is still pretty watery, but we want it to be creamy. So put about half a cup of heavy whipping cream into a bowl and add 1 egg yolk. Carefully separate the egg white from the egg yolk and only put the egg yolk in. Then mix everything thoroughly with a hand mixer, only about 30 seconds or so. And that's gonna be our soup binding. One ingredient I forgot to mention before, and that's we need about half a cup of white wine. I'm using this California Chardonnay here. It doesn't need to be a premium wine, but don't use the cheapest kind either. It'll definitely be noticeable in the soup when you're tasting it, so don't ruin the soup with cheap wine. Almost done. Now for a round of seasoning, we need a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. Even a sprinkle of sugar improves the taste of the soup, and also a splash of the Worcestershire sauce, or the German Maggi if you have it. Give it a good whirl, and then let's check if we got the taste right. Just sample a little bit, and if necessary, you can always add a little bit more salt or pepper or of the sauce if desired. As a final step for the soup base, let's stir in our egg and heavy whipping cream mix. Make sure that the soup does not boil anymore, because if this happened, the egg would coagulate and make a big mess out of the soup. So just keep it hot for about 5 minutes and let the egg yolk cook, but keep the heat down so you don't see any bubbles. Now it's time to add our precious asparagus. Also try to not break anything. Mix it in very carefully and let it slowly come up to temperature. Make sure it's not boiling anymore because the asparagus is already cooked and we don't want it to be softer than it already is. And there you have it. Our asparagus soup is ready after only 15 to 20 minutes, I would say. Serve it on preheated plates. Take great care that everybody gets a fair amount of asparagus that's swimming around there, and also make sure everybody gets the same amount of asparagus tips, because those are the best parts. Look at our delicious cream of white asparagus. Isn't it nice? Sprinkle some of the chives on top, not only as decoration, but also as a fresh and crunchy texture. As for a wine pairing, I would recommend using the same white wine, that California Chardonnay that I used here, that we put into the soup earlier. Since the white asparagus has a very subtle taste, you definitely don't want to use a heavy red wine that would overpower that taste. Guten Appetit! If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of these recipes cooked in Mike's Expat Kitchen, consider subscribing to the channel.